Rising sun. What if the most misunderstood thing about one of the world's largest private yachts isn't its length, its celebrity guest list, or even its speed, but a design decision that quietly explains why people keep talking about it 20 years later? Stick around. By the end, I'll reveal the single choice that turns Rising Sun from a floating headline into a week-winning machine, and why it still punches above its weight in the era of newer, louder giga-yachts. Overview. Rising Sun is a 138-meter Northern European flagship with unmistakable lines and two tiers of glass that look like a modernist sculpture sliding across the horizon. She was conceived in the early 2000s for long-range, high-comfort cruising at real speed, and finished to a standard that dared every marina to measure up. On the dock, she reads like theater. Underway, she reads like quiet confidence. She's steel below, aluminum above, and every inch feels like it was drawn to make big water feel small and busy, weeks feel easy. The mission here was never just to be long, it was to be livable at scale. That means generous headroom, real exterior terraces, and a service envelope that works when you load the boat with family and friends. The public knows the name because of its owners and guests over the years, but seasoned yacht people talk about Rising Sun with a different tone. Respect for the way the boat actually moves through a week. Key features. Drop to sea level, and the boat's personality snaps into focus. There's a true beach and sports deck that turns into a regulation-length basketball court when you want to burn energy and doubles as a helipad when the schedule calls for speed. Aft, the waterline life is tuned for smooth, tender ops and water sports without turning the whole day into logistics. Inside, the cinema isn't a token screening room. It's a real place to disappear for a couple of hours with a good mix and proper sightlines. The spa and gym aren't hidden in the bilge. They're placed where you'll actually use them. And the social spaces, salons, lounges, dining, flow in a way that lets parallel storylines run at once without stepping on each other. The interior language is warm and urbane instead of shouty. You get textures that photograph beautifully, but, more important, feel right underhand. Lighting is layered for long evenings. Airflow is civilized. Acoustics are dialed, so conversation sounds like conversation, not a PA announcement. Key specifications. Let's anchor the numbers before we dive deeper. Overall length sits just shy of 455 feet. Call it 138.6 meters, with a beam of about 19 meters and a draft near 5. Internal volume is an outsized 7,800-plus gross tons, which translates to meaningful privacy and wide, unhurried circulation. Propulsion comes from 4 big MTU diesels driving a quad-screw arrangement. Top-end lives in the high 20 knots neighborhood, with an easy cruise close to 26. Guest capacity centers on 18 in 9 staterooms, supported by a crew complement in the mid-40s, because seamless weeks don't happen by magic. This isn't a spec sheet that exists for brochure bragging. It's a set of numbers that makes the calendar feel cooperative. Exterior experience. From the passerelle, you feel something rare on a yacht this size. Calm pacing. Side decks keep their width at the pinch points, which means crew choreography stays invisible, and guests never feel like they're walking single file. The aft terraces are layered, not stacked. Every deck earns its view without shadowing the one below. Up top, wind management is tuned so an underway lunch doesn't turn into a napkin rodeo, and the furniture sits level without wedge blocks, small signs that tolerances are doing their job. The court-turned helipad isn't just a party trick. It's a schedule weapon. It lets late arrivals join the story and early departures slip out without turning the day into an excursion. Interior atmosphere. Step into the main salon And you get the thesis. Long sight lines, light that flatters faces, seating that invites actual conversation, and an audio system that supports the room instead of stealing it. The palette is premium without being precious. You can spread out books, devices, and snacks without feeling like you're violating a museum. In the dining spaces, the ceiling geometry quietly handles acoustics, so dinners last because voices stay relaxed. The cinema is the kind you'd actually use, with proper isolation and a screen that respects modern content, not a leftover afterthought. Cabins respect real life. The owner's domain plays like an apartment. The top VIP doesn't feel like a consolation prize. The remaining staterooms avoid the dreaded beautiful but compromised trap. Bathrooms are generous without turning into water-wasting monuments. Closets are practical, and the finishes feel like home rather than a hotel trying too hard. Performance and range. Underway, Rising Sun is a big-shouldered cruiser that likes to stretch. That quad-screw power, combined with a hull that was meant to move, turns long legs into oddly short afternoons. The boat settles into a stride near the mid-20s, where the wake looks confident, and the decibel count inside stays human. Yes, the top speed headlines exist, and they're impressive. But what owners and captains remember is the way she holds a number all day without drama. Range at sensible displacement profiles opens up real options. Island chains stop being puzzles, and shoulder season weather windows stop being coin flips. The stabilization and power isolation work pays off exactly when it should. Late at night, when the anchorage rocks and your guests don't. Ownership, money, and the real math. Let's talk dollars like adults. Rising Sun was a 9-figure build in the mid-2000s, and the market still talks about the number. The important part for viewers is what that translates to now. A vessel with the structural heft, systems pedigree, and service culture of a true flagship. Operating budgets at this length live in the deep 8 figures annually when you include crew, technical cycles, insurance, fuel, soft goods, and global logistics. That sounds abstract until you spend a week aboard and realize what you're buying. Time that feels unhurried, privacy that actually holds, and an engineering baseline that keeps the boat in the background where it belongs. Is she for charter? Typically, no. This is a private platform. But the best way to understand her tier is to look at peers of similar scale. When they do charter, 7-figure weekly base rates before expenses aren't unusual. Rising Sun wasn't built to chase that market. She was built to make the owner's calendar frictionless. The money makes sense when you measure it against that goal. Day in the life on board. Let's run a Tuesday. The day starts at the sports deck with a few games on the court before breakfast. Because, why not? A tender heads out for a quiet swim spot, while guests drift from gym to spa without tripping over housekeeping. Lunch happens under shade with the horizon framed perfectly. Not a fussy railing in sight. Afternoon brings a movie in a cinema that feels like a private screening, not a converted lounge. Sunset arrives up top, where the geometry finally clicks. Every deck earns a front row seat. Dinner lingers because the noise floor stays friendly. Nobody is leaning across the table to be heard. Later, the anchorage rocks a little. The stabilizers handle their business, and the night feels like a hotel that learned to float. Comparisons that clarify. The internet loves to stack yachts like baseball cards. Here's a better lens. Think of 3 axes: size, speed, and serenity. There are newer boats that eclipse Rising Sun in one dimension or another. Raw volume here, playful exterior theatrics there. But the combination of long, glassy elevations, a proper power package, and a deck plan that breathes is harder to beat than people expect. If you've seen our jet comparisons, this is the move from the headline-grabbing top speed to the cabin where you actually want to spend 10 hours. Rising Sun doesn't need to win the harbor photo to win the week. She just has to make every day feel like it's happening on your terms. Myths, misunderstandings, and a lesser-known truth. Myth 1 says she's just big. Spend a day aboard, and you'll notice the restraint. The spectacle lives in the scale and the glass, not in gratuitous flourishes. Myth 2 says older flagships age out when the next big thing splashes. The refit discipline and systems care on a platform like this keep her relevant because comfort, pace, and flow don't go out of style. Lesser-known truth: that basketball court isn't a gimmick. It's the physical expression of the brief. Movement, wellness, family energy. And it's why the deck plan works for multi-generation trips. You don't measure that on a spec sheet, but you feel it by day 2. Who Rising Sun is for. If you want a catalog of loud party tricks, there are yachts that will out-theater her. If you want to carry real speed when it helps, arrive places fresh, and live in rooms that feel designed for human beings, this boat fits. She's for owners who like friends aboard but love privacy, for families who want parallel plans running smoothly, and for crews who appreciate when the tool was drawn by grown-ups. I've filmed flashier decks, and I've seen bigger interiors. I've rarely seen this combination of poise and pace. My take. I've been around enough flagship hardware to know when a boat's reputation is doing the work and when the boat is doing the work. Rising Sun earns her stories. The glass isn't just a look. It changes how you inhabit the horizon. The quad screw muscle isn't just brochure ink. It turns long runs into solvable problems. The Court helipad combo isn't just flex. It keeps your day elastic. If you measure luxury by the absence of friction, this yacht still reads like a masterclass. And yes, I'd miss a few gym memberships just to say I've boxed out under the stars on that deck. Key specifications: length about 138.6 meters, beam roughly 19 meters, draft near 5. Internal volume in the 7,800 plus gross ton range. 4 MTU diesels on 4 shafts for a top end in the high 20s and a confident cruise near 26. Accommodation planned for around 18 guests across 9 staterooms, supported by a crew in the mid-40s. Core amenities include the convertible basketball helipad deck, a true cinema, spa and gym, generous salons, and terraces sized for actual living. Money talk. Reported build cost sat in the 9-figure range in the mid-2000s. Annual operating budgets scale with program and standard, but live well into 8 figures at this length. Comparable vessels that do charter often post 7-figure weekly base rates before expenses. Rising Sun is known primarily as a private platform, built for schedule control and comfort rather than marketplace availability. The final reveal. You waited for the design decision that explains Rising Sun's staying power. It isn't just the length or the speed. It's the combination of long, stacked glass elevations with a deck plan that treats motion and light as the real luxuries. That glass doesn't merely show the sea. It shapes how you feel in the space. Pair it with a hull meant to move and a convertible court helipad that keeps the day elastic, and you get a yacht that still feels modern in the only way that matters, the way your week actually unfolds. That's why people still talk about Rising Sun, and it's why the whispers sound like respect. If this deep dive gave you a new way to look at big boat luxury, tap subscribe so YouTube brings you our next premiere automatically. Tell me in the comments, would you trade a knot of top speed for the kind of deck plan that gives you a real-life sports court And a flexible helipad? I'm featuring the sharpest take next episode. For members-only polls, shipyard notes, and early looks, hit join on the channel page. And if this episode made your day, drop a super thanks. Your highlighted comment powers the next investigation and gets a shout-out on screen. Don't end the session here. Jump to our Luxury Yachts playlist to see how Rising Sun stacks up against her European peers. If you're curious how aviation solves the same quiet luxury problem, cue up our cabin deep dive next. YouTube should be surfacing it on the right. I'll meet you there.